Hi everyone. How's it going? Me, I'm doing okay. The kids have been dropped off for summer camp, and I have a lot of time, so I'm going to be looking at a project that's very dear to my heart. Kalterkrieg. Is it going to show up here? There we go. So I'm just going to open up the Hearts of Iron 4 mod because this actually is released and you can play it, unlike other lore graves or other situations like that. And while it has been, I'm on this list, but I won't tell you my modding alias. Despite the fact that it came out and the fact that there's a crap ton of work that's gone into it, all the division names, all these generals, everything about it, they have their own states. People say nothing ever happens. Look at why. So there could be some game design elements that are at play, and I'll cover those more in the video itself. But when it comes to the scenario, there are things that we could do, small tweaks, that could improve things. Now, this isn't going to be like my Krasnacht lore grave, lore stream, where I actually had a lot of this stuff done already. I actually don't have any QBAM stuff right now, so I want to quickly just do an observer for like a quick little minute while I go into my Photoshop file and I copy over some potentially useful assets. There's some QBAMs from several different eras of development of this mod that I can use to varying levels of success, and there's only the two here. Might as well take these other like higher definition ones. I don't know what the guy's name is who made it, but yeah, the art of this whole thing, the situation, everything, it's just really great. I love it. People might not particularly enjoy it, but it's very special to me, and I want to do my best to honor the mod. And we're just not going to go talking about like game design things. I just have some ideas that could be pretty interesting to see. So a long time ago, I want to see if I can find it. There were some elements of the original version of Kalterkrieg, the Chroma era Kalterkrieg, that never made it to the light of day. A lot of them for good reason, but there's one that I really liked, and it was National Populist Switzerland. Right now they have it where I think that they still have Hot Savoy, which is like a contested claim here, but National Populist Switzerland was supposed to have even Savoy, and I think even Aosta, so they were pretty big. I have it in my notes for my script, so I'll see if I can pull it up there, because like it's actually kind of hard to find. It's like really buried. But anyway, so what are people saying in the chat? How do I deal with China in this mod? Well, the scenario here is good. The problem is like balance. I don't know if it's like because there's like no factories compared to up here or something, but whatever it is, currently the factions here are a little not well balanced, but you can just add more divisions. You can add more factories. Those are things that can be solved. This situation is pretty solid. I have an idea that could change things up here if they wanted to consider that, but it's definitely not required. But there are some like smaller, at least I believe, smaller impact things that could be adjusted, and we'll get into that. But mostly this is just going to be mapping what actually was what Kalterkrieg currently is, instead of inventing it from the ground up, because this is the first LoreDoc, right? And if you're wondering where the mapping is, well, it says map and yeah, but I don't know what you thought was going to happen when you signed up for this. So I'll get rid of I'll move this over here. Okay, let's see, what's the most important? I guess I can gush about like the things that I'm particularly nerdy about. So I'm gonna flip over to Photoshop again, and I'm going to look at this stuff. So I see some comments already about like other people's ideas for changes, and I'm going to address those. But the way that I will be approaching it is very specific in guidelines and ideas. So, but we'll get into that. So this is the map that really got me interested in this scenario. The ideologies, alignments, religions, all this stuff, the depth that had gone into it, the flags, the Danubian Federation flag. I loved that flag. I was really interested in this scenario, and I joined in. It was my first project that I ever worked on. And I will not show you my first ideas for suggestions because they were awful, but a lot of the skills that I learned in order to be a good alternate history guy, good like focus on Hearts of Iron 4 stuff, it all came from Kalterkrieg. So I have a really strong affiliation with these people, and I am really excited to get into things. But you can see here, like, this is one of the first versions of Kalterkrieg. They had a North and South Paris. I used to be a really big fan of this because of like the aesthetic of a Cold War, but I actually see why it's not the case. Like, yeah, maybe you could have some extra tensions. I know that there was an idea where, like, because the Eiffel Towers and the Germans curfew, they blow it up and replace it with a bunch of statues of kings, which is like, that's an interesting way for a war to start, but maybe not plausible, right? And then there was also this weird like French occupation of Catalonia, like that obviously shouldn't be kept. But this is the National Populist Switzerland I was talking to you about. They have a lot of land here, and it becomes a problem. And then the Entente had to deal with it, and I can get into that a little more. I'll use Entente and Accord interchangeably in this stream, so don't get too confused. The split Russia here makes sense. This is the same. I think that Kurland is still Kurland, and I don't know what happened to these islands. I can just quickly check here. Yeah, the islands are Estonia, and Kurland is Kurland, so that's fine. This is weird. Why is Switzerland occupying that specific thing? Whatever. But yeah, this is like the quote-unquote dead mod aspect of it. This is long gone. There has been a lot of debates and a lot of things that have been established to make this a lot more coherent and balanced of a scenario. Like, yeah, maybe it was cool to have Italy split up this much, but it wouldn't really be balanced in the Entente. Like, look at this. Like, this is Europe. How are you supposed to deal with this as the Accord? There's like 3 nations and like a little statelet here. Oh, good luck, buddy. Like, that's ridiculous. Anyway, so all respect to Chroma because they started this ball rolling, even if things ended up being way different in the end. But this is like early Kalterkrieg. This is when I joined in. This is closer. No, this is still the same. This is just a QBAM version of the old one. You can see here they like consolidated Italy into. I think this is a Danubian aligned puppet. You can start to see the changes. Oh yeah, Brazil used to be broken up. That got retconned. The CSA used to be a tag that you could play at the beginning, even though they would have been at war for like 15 years or something like that. So that was changed for the better. China was still in development, and like it was old China reworks. This is like oh wow, this is very low quality. Jeez. But yeah, the idea was that they'd be national populist, and they would have to deal with the fact that they owned all these territories and had to manage them somehow. So sufficiently warm up yapped, we can get into things here, but I am going to take this. Is this so this is a pixelated version that we can copy in. So, you know, there's a lot of outdated things here, like Germany controlling Nanzig or whatever it is. We are going to copy and paste this in. We're going to turn out Terra Incognita for a minute. I'll just here. And what we do is we center it. We change the scaling type to nearest neighbor. We scale up. We realign it. And now it works. Yeah, so you would see Misalignment. This is probably an old version of QBAM too. But now it's aligned, so now we can use this as reference. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect, but it's good enough to start with. Okay. Let's take a look at what everybody has said about this situation here. So, is it somebody talking in Russian? No idea. Yeah, I think that people say nothing ever happens in Kalterkrieg because there are little major wars or civil wars to the player. Yeah, so that's a good point. It may be a little misguided to say nothing happens because there's a bunch of mechanics that have been implemented for everybody to enjoy in a peacetime gameplay. There's the accord voting system. There's all these other things really well designed and integrated into the mod. But people like the Hearts of Iron 4 aspect of the mod, or the game, where you send volunteers and then the impact of your victory in a civil conflict boosts your faction's power for the eventual world war, which is like, there's only one major civil war in vanilla. There's like 20 or maybe 10. There's just a lot of different conflicts that you can get involved in Kaiserreich, and maybe people were expecting that out of Kalterkrieg. They do have proxy conflicts. The problem is that they don't, from what I've heard, they don't feel exactly consequential enough for it to be a major impact. And the balance of the scenario is so in favor of the Germans that there's basically no point. All these things are like, yeah, maybe they're a little misguided, but they're still valid. Like, that's the thing, is that you can just dismiss criticism. In a lot of cases, you should be, but the fact that people are saying it at all means something. Like, you could say that, oh, my arm hurts, and the reason why my arm hurts is because I bruised it, but it could actually be that, like, there's a pinched nerve going from your neck to your spine that's causing your body to think that there's pain there. Your symptom is not the disease. The disease is something different. The cause of the pain is different. When you're giving critiques like nothing ever happens, maybe it's more like, I feel like there was nothing for me to do. I didn't have enough agency or impact in the world for it to be valuable. And player agency is very important in game design, especially things like Hearts of Iron 4, which is a sandbox game. Kaiserreich is not as sandbox as vanilla, but with benefit, because then you have an entire new geopolitical scenario. It's like turning on the alternate history or like historical focus is off, but then actually having a balanced scenario. And you don't have to, as Germany, capitulate Chile in order to get rid of all your malices of occupying all these territories. There's ways for you to, if you've occupied France for long enough, annex them, but then you're still at war with the rest of the Third Internationale. And you can only do that when you have a streamlined scenario like Kaiserreich. But this isn't Kaiserreich, this isn't Vanilla Hearts of Iron 4, this is Kalterkrieg, a Cold War mod that's set in the Kaiserreich universe. So let's get into it. So we have this here. I am going to see, what is this? I'm going to put you in timeout for that. Hirohito, what the hell is that? Polish Warriors complain about, yeah, don't worry. This little panhandle didn't make it into the game. It's a really great map. This old map is cursed. Yeah, well, it's not too bad. All Hearts must give me power fantasies are also terrible. Yeah, I mean, subjective, right? I have an idea how to inform out. Japan one's older too, but Germany doesn't. I want to focus on Kalterkrieg only stuff. Maybe an Austrian-German split, like the Sino-Soviet split. Yeah, that is one of the things that I would change if I was in their shoes. I would immediately just... I would immediately just make it so the Danubians and Germans have a split. But then the question is why? Well, there's a really good precedent in lore for that. They have the Germans have this problem where they're doing like the new state reforms and it's not democratic. And then while Danubia is reformed, it's still a multicultural federation. And all the other cultures in their federation might be like, why are you associating with this authoritarianness? I thought you were supposed to be liberal and like not German centric, and they're like, okay, fine, we'll leave. So we could definitely have something like that. So while I think that these Luxembourg borders are incorrect, we are going to start with the ones that we know work already. So Danubian Federation, such a good name. Man, if only there was another scenario that used that name. I'm going to turn off the bleed thing here. I believe that this Ukrainian border is still correct. Yeah, just taking a look at the way it is in Hearts of Iron 4, it's accurate. So I think it's the Hetmanate. And I'm putting anybody who says nothing ever happens in timeout. There's a pinned message for a reason. Remember, people spent a lot of time working on this, myself included, and to just be like, haha, funny meme. Not funny, man. I know that Montenegro got annexed, so we'll just make a Serbia here. And, there we go. So that's Serbia, and then they have a puppet relationship with Albania, which is interesting. There's a little interesting thing about the fact that hold on, that email. Yeah, no worries. There is something about the Balkan situation where they didn't go to war with the Reichspakt at all, and it's a little bit weird, but at the same time, it's like, does it really matter that much? Like, it's still a good and interesting scenario, and it's even better because if we have a Austrian split with Germany, and canonically, where is it? Here. The gray countries are influenced by Germany, right? Romania is influenced by Germany. So you have all these Germans up here. Serbia is a little liberal, so maybe they're accord, and then everyone goes in on Danubia. But then the question is, why would Danubia ever leave Germany if they would just end up being partitioned? I do still believe in the, like, well, you are a multicultural federation, you should respect the cultures instead of continuing to associate with them. Maybe they even go, like, we're the third block non-aligned, and then they, like, try to play both sides. That could be an interesting way to play them. But then, yeah, everything else just doesn't really make sense. But then again, if the problem is that the Reichspakt are too powerful at the beginning, and the Entente the Accord needed an ability to get an edge on them, why wouldn't they be able to sway one of the largest things against each other? Like, and there's, like, here's the thing. I mentioned this in my video too. Kalterkrieg has done an amazing job making a very plausible scenario that respects the Kaiserreich lore, and is an amazing feat considering that they made it directly as a continuation. Every single time there was a rework, they adjusted the lore, they redid work. That's why it took so long to get it out and for everybody to enjoy. Right? No. Most people to enjoy. No. Yeah. But because of that, it causes problems where, like, oh, well, plausibly, Danubia wouldn't do this because A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But then you could make an argument plausibly for the other way. And because it's like 30, 40 years of divergence away from, like, 1910 or whatever it was, whenever the point of divergence of Kaiserreich is, you're doing 40 years of divergence in that point. You could have several different opinions coming from several different people, and you can't really manage that. So there we go. That's a conflict, and it's up for them to decide. But if I had to give my 2 cents, I think that it might be time to distance yourself from the main Kaiserreich mod. Let me see. The mod could have benefited from a different start date. Yes, that is something I even cover, because as it is right now, if you look at this, regardless, despite the, like, inconsistencies, Germany's in an extremely dominant state. The American Union state is aligned with Germany, if the Canadians, Pacific States, and New Englander, I'm using those terms, doesn't matter, defeat the AUS, then they win. They have a chance to survive the Cold War. But if they don't, then the Cold War is over. And you could go, oh, well, it would be a lot better if it was balanced, where the USA was united and leading the Entente, and maybe the Accord, and maybe the Accord has already begun like centralization things, like they have the same currency, and it's like our European Union but on steroids. And then the German colonial empire, Middle Africa, is already dead, and there's no like, oh, nothing happens in Middle Africa, none of that. And then it's hard-headed Germans with their superior like economy, superior, like the Americans have a good economy too, but they have a really powerful economy. They have a very strong grip over the entire continent. Maybe they even control European Russia. And then they're having to deal with because they're too stuck in the past, they're falling behind these people. They have social issues that they need to deal with. And then at that point, it's like, oh, well, why wasn't a Victoria 2 or Victoria 3 mod? Because remember, this is before Victoria 3 came out, that everyone did all this work. And yeah, maybe there can be something like that, but that's not what we're doing here. We're not about to go up to the entire development team of Kalterkrieg and be like, I don't like it. Make it in this. Like, could you imagine if you made a cake and then the person you made it for is like, I wanted an ice cream cake. How would you feel? Like, come on, man. Like, yeah, anyway, like, I'm a little rambling. I know that you weren't saying that, but I have seen people say that. And it's like, okay, why don't we just respect the work that's already been put into it? Why don't we make adjustments and embrace the fact that the Accord is in a very vulnerable situation? They have a very tenable hold over France. The decolonization movement in Middle Africa are going to spread over to France. If you get France to decolonize because dunk on the Germans, what are they left with? How would these people feel about the fact that they're being told by some New Englander whatever guy to decolonize? How would they feel if like they finally reclaimed half of their birthright, and then some dude is like, yeah, you gotta decolonize, bro. And it's like, okay, well, maybe I'll just join the Germans then. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm pretty sure that they're already addressing this by making the decolonization efforts be like a chiropract or Japan-led thing, so that the Accord isn't whitewashed. Because it's like, yeah. Anyway, I'm a little rambly, but this is what you came for, right? Mapping, yeah. Ukraine having a bit of Poland. Don't think that's the case in Kaiserreich. Yeah, I'm not sure. This cake should be a pizza. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's an even better thing. It's like, I'm not hungry for dessert. Will the USA become overpowered, the Accord being incredibly dominant? Okay, quote unquote, over time. Yeah, maybe. But if you're trying to make a scenario that's like a very specific dynamic, then like, I don't know, like, yeah, if the USA joins, then maybe the Danubians and Germans join up, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, these people won 2 world wars, and they are reformed, and they are centralizing Europe. Like, now what are you gonna do, right? And it's like, oh no, Cold War, and then it's like 1960s, mutually assured destruction. You want to avoid the war. We can go on forever about like our canon Kaiserreich things, but I would love to focus on this mod and how to make it better. So it's very hard to keep track of what people are saying in chat while also doing this. And it's hard to prioritize because I get like I just get like meme messages and then I get distracted. So I'm just gonna go back into this right now. But I'll think of things to say and do. Good thing is that we have a Kaiserreich QBAM here that we can also reference. So yeah, this is the actual Poland borders. It could be that this was a older, like, because of how old Kalterkrieg is, it could be that this iteration here didn't have like this is that maybe those borders were accurate to Poland back in the day, but they aren't anymore. So The fact that Poland's this small is very sad. But at least they have a state. It could be worse. I think that in my Krasnach things I have a better selection of... No, I don't, actually. This is an old version of the Krasnach stuff I was working on. I want to open up my Krasnach document here. I tried making a new way to organize my files, and it's actually probably way worse. So that's unfortunate. How do I hide user on channel? How do I get rid of you? Yeah, there you go. Thanks for the extra engagement by the chat messages. No thanks for making a mess. Did World War II end with a nuke in this timeline? Yes. So in this timeline, not this timeline with where is it? There's like a Baltics channel, independent Baltics. I called it Balkans. There's the Lithuania we know and love. Okay, so put you here. Don't give you memo. What is it, the borders on this thing? Oh yeah, because this is the old one. This is more accurate. So in Kalterkrieg's lore, the war lasts for a very long time. That's mostly because the British refused to surrender because I don't remember what happens. I don't think there's like many landings, or if there are little landings. It was supported with a German nuclear detonation. And the fact that the Germans used a nuke to make the situation resolve faster makes the Entente very upset, understandably so. This causes there to be a rift between the alliance soon after the former United Front against the Third Internationale, soon after the war concludes. And that's where our story picks up. There's the entire dynamic where people are wondering, like, are like trying to figure out how to best do justice for the crimes of the totalists in Britain. There are problems in Britain where they have Germans occupying the south of their country, and many a problem due to such situations. And there's the Germans trying to put in power like the Ministry, which are like extreme reactionaries, anti-democratic. And yeah, there's a lot of really cool things that come from this scenario because of how in-depth Kaiserreich is as a scenario and all of the stuff that they do. And the interesting thing is that because people were so dedicated to this concept for a mod, people eventually just became Kalterkrieg Kaiserreich developers, and then they wouldn't have to worry about reworks destroying all their work because they were making the reworks in Kaiserreich. They got a say in how it was run before and after. No problems there. So good on them. They made a better world for Kalterkrieg and Kaiserreich both, and I salute their efforts. There's a lot of good things that came out of Kalterkrieg that people don't really realize. Kalterkrieg's balance is not just military but economy, because the Entente's two largest members are ravaged by warfare while Germany is mostly intact. That is entirely true. And the fact that Canada is the leader of the fight against the Germans is bonkers. And I say that with the knowledge that I was one of the main Canada developers. I could be wrong, but back in the day, at one point, I was the lead Canada developer. And it's like, oh, well, I'm responsible for all those critiques people have for the mod. Like, oh, Canada shouldn't be the leader of the Entente or whatever. Like, it's wanky to Canada. 100% my fault. But in my defense, I was given a task. That task was, you have to make a Canada strong enough to be able to deal with the fact that they're running a Cold War against the Germans. And let's see, what's the Great Lakes government's color? It's like a toothpaste green. By the way, the Great Lakes government was also my idea. Well, it might have been like a collaborative thing. I don't want to be claiming all this stuff without proof. So maybe take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But I was very involved in Kalterkrieg, so much so that it was going to be a problem for the people who are actually coding things in. That's why I'm a former developer, but we won't get into that. But yeah, so Canada, it became a safe haven for all of the reactionary, which means like liberals, not just evil barons that wanted to get away from the terror, quote unquote, that was happening in that was happening in the Home Isles. Oh no, we don't want to do that. That was happening in the Home Isles, and that gave them the opportunity to have a boost of population. Then the Canadians were then the Americans had a civil war, and that meant that the Canadians had to deal with bring in a bunch of refugees, which also benefited their population. And because the scenario is already so determined to be... What the hell's going on here? I'll just deal with it later. And because the Canadians were the leaders and they won, quote unquote, in the Civil War here, then they would be in a really good position. The fact that they have a puppet state in New England, which kind of got retconned to be more of an independent thing, also gives them a really big economic boost. The fact that they are running the British government while it's being reconstructed also gives them a really big boost. This is the best timeline for a Canadian superpower timeline. You could make a really long point divergence, be like, oh, well, like, what if the British also took Louisiana and whatever? It's like, okay, that's not Canada then, because the Revolutionary War of American independence would be different. You need to have a Canada in order for it to be a Canada that we recognize as one that was separate from America for a very long time, to the point where the American Civil War occurs, which basically helped Canada become its identity itself, given the fact that what am I saying? Given the fact that the Underground Railroad went up to Canada. It was the one place that the enslaved South people who wanted to not be enslaved could go. Canada has always been defined by the fact that it's not America, for better and worse. So in order for a Canadian superpower timeline to exist, the best way is to have a Kalterkrieg scenario, which is why I was so passionate about it. And here's another, I'll tease something here. One of my more radical suggestions is to reconsider the approach that Canada takes in its place in the world. If you think about it without like considering everything that's been going on with the local populations of Canada, but instead look at the governmental structure of Canada as it was in... Hold on, this is a Canadian outpost, so I'm gonna cheekily delete this and give it to Canada. Canada was the seat of the British Empire for 2 decades. The Canadian governmental system, the state of Canada, is the engine that allowed for the United Kingdom to be restored. The United Kingdom is just another kingdom in the crowns of the British Empire, including the Crown of Canada. The Senate and the Viceroy are still positions in the Canadian government that exist to this day. Their legacy, from when Canada was even given Dominion status, was supposed to be you guys have your own government so that you don't defect to the Americans. This means that you'll have somebody who acts as king, like a viceroy, which is what the governor general is, and you'll have a House of Lords, but it won't be a House of Lords, it'll be a Senate, and this Senate is appointed by the governor general. At least it was, right? I think now the governor general, like, quote unquote, is an advisor to the prime minister, right? And the prime minister is still, like, appointed by the governor general, right? Like, the legal precedent to this day has been established by the laws that were established back in the Articles of Confederation that made Canada itself. So when people go, like, oh, well, the Canadian government would be upset that their government's being overtaken by the British exiles. No, like, literally, like, your temporary head has been replaced with the real head. The House of Lords just become the Senate. The Governor General is not relevant because the King is there. But by the time that Kalterkrieg starts, the King is still in Canada, right? It hasn't gone back home yet. They're still getting this place stable. The center of the empire is still in Canada. Do you get where I'm going with this? What if there was a path not to delete what's already been put for Canada, where they can be more focused on strengthening the accord, helping the Americans unite, setting up a foundation that allows for a multinational union of states to counteract the German hegemony. Instead, they focus on Britain and Australasia, a Kanzuk union that is the British Empire 2.0, but isn't just going to be like British Empire, glory to the Imperial Federation. It could be called the Imperial Federation because it's a federation of dominions. Federation of crowns underneath the British Empire, the British King. Maybe it's like a balance of power, where the old state of Canada, the way that it was supposed to be, is in a state where they need to decide their future and what their identity is. Are they British or are they Canadian? And we have that in already very strong in the beginning of the game. Mackenzie King is doing all these reforms to make sure that Canada is, like, independent but still related to the crown, but not really. That is a completely reasonable outcome of the fact that Canada and Canadian soldiers restored the British king and they're disillusioned with the empire. That dynamic can still happen. And you can have the British Empire aspect. If you have Canada in a Kanzuk Union, or the ability to form it by the end of the term of the game, able to form it as a nice little yay, just like how the New Englandic and the Pacific government can unite into America with very limited or no content. But that's the end of their, quote-unquote, end of their content. You could have Canada be either the, okay, let's start to centralize the accord, and that's their ending, or the fail state of, we don't even want to be involved in the war anymore. Canada's just a full republic. You guys do whatever you want. The Entente collapses. Germany wins. Also an outcome that can happen if people go too far towards the Canadian independent identity. Maybe there's also a problem where if they become too focused on becoming an imperial federation again, maybe that's when the republic happens and there's like a civil war in Canada. Who knows? There's a lot of things you can do with this. And the reason why you can do a lot with it is you're not being strictly a Kaiserreich continuation, and you're deliberately seeking conflict in your scenarios in order to make an interesting gameplay mechanic. Like, yes, this is the most the way that Kalterkrieg is currently depicted is the most plausible way that Kaiserreich can exist. People still complain about it not being a full mod, right? Like, it was like, oh, it's a dead mod. It's like, okay, first off, it's an alpha release. Like, you're spoiled, basically, of content. People have tried really hard to do it, but maybe that's the problem. I don't know. It's for them to decide, and I'm not going to force anything, but I have a lot of opinions about this because of how involved I was in the scenario, right? So again, like, please don't pressure. I was rambling for a lot there. Please don't pressure the Kalterkrieg developers to adopt my ideas. If they want to adopt my ideas, they are more than welcome to. Guys, I accidentally figured out the best way to solve the problem. Just have Canada own all of Germany. Why hasn't this been considered before? Maybe I should start focusing on making sure that these layers are related to factions. Poland Germany, Ukraine, Reich Pact, and then these can be like Balkans. Maybe this is a bad idea. Let's see. Let's look at what everyone's been saying here. And yeah, everyone's talking about Federation. Yeah, everyone's on board with this idea. The SPD path isn't the canon. Well, okay, there's an element here too, and this is again my fault. Well, at least I feel responsible because I was a big advocate of this approach back in the day. There's a problem with the fact that people, or at least there's been a critique that has been repeated. People are like, why is liberalism glazed so much? Why are people accentuating this element of the hold on. I shouldn't be using this selection for the German Empire. Yeah, but the problem is that Greater Luxembourg isn't a thing. Okay, so we're going to make this German Empire selection. It's not going to be accurate. Then we're going to go in here and do the selection here that is also not accurate, but use that to define the eastern border, and the western border has been properly defined here. What was I saying? Oh yeah, the liberalism thing. People are like, oh, there isn't enough of a ideological divide between the two factions, and I was insecure about that. So I'm like, let's make it so liberalism is a distinct ideology from the Germans, and have them go authoritarian. And that seems like just very basic determination that should fix the problem. Problem is it didn't, because there's still plenty of issues. Hold on, this is defining the eastern border. This is the accurate eastern border. So we don't delete things here. Oh no, we do. Okay. The thing is that we should be focusing more on the strengths of Kalterkrieg as a scenario, and the best way that other people have just like explained it, that I agree with, is a Victorian era politics with nukes. Oh yeah, here's another balanced decision. Let's give Canada the Suez Canal, Djibouti, Ceylon, and Madagascar, and all this stuff over here. And what do we mean by that? What do you mean by a Victorian era politics with nukes? Because Germany is the only one with the nukes at the start of the game, even though the Canadians quickly develop one, which causes the Cold War to officially start. Germany is still in a very dominant position. They get to decide how the game is played. And because they are, if we look at the core, and core is subjective, but in my opinion, the core is like the future versus the past, right? Conservatism versus social liberalism. Like the core tries to adapt syndicalism, Germans try to repress it. Of course, Germany would be acting like they were in the past, and they would continue to act the way they were in the past. Canada can't create nukes that early, bro? Why? No, seriously, why? I'd like to know what your reasoning is. What was I saying? This isn't the right one. This is the right one. Yeah. What was I saying? This is going to be pretty difficult, to be honest, because there's different versions of this. I'll figure out the specifics later. We can talk more about things like the divide here. I think that this is accurate. Canada has the full capacity to make news. It has every resource. It has good enough scientists. It chooses not to. Canada has a uranium mine. Can I add Among Us to the map? Yeah, sure, why not? That'll really help the balance of the game. Kalterkrieg begins too early. Another problem is Germany's too powerful. Yeah, I talked about that in the beginning of the stream. Like, you could go, well, let's just do it this way, where they start later. But then, problem is, the problem is that you can't just redo that amount of work. You can't just go, well, sorry, your premise is flawed. The reason why Kalterkrieg was even able to release is that it decided, you know what, I don't care if the scenario is imbalanced. I want this to get out there for the merits that it is, instead of reworking the lore constantly. And we ought to respect that. And in order to best respect that, we need to look at the ways that we can improve it without destroying original work. Canada is super changed to the British. Keep France united. Yeah, I considered putting France united as a suggestion, but I feel like it's way too much of a change. And I would say that split France is like the core. Like you can't just get rid of that. And then USA being split up. Yeah, if the USA is united, then it could be more balanced war, but do you want it to be? Why can't we just have it be separate? Also, 4, if you count Great Lakes government, 4 different nations with their leaders, focus descriptions, leader descriptions, party names, order of battle, divisions. All that would have to go away. We can't do that. This is LoreDoc, not LoreGrave. We need to respect the work that's already been put in and adapt it. Currently, there's no Switzerland content, so I'm pretty confident in my ability to suggest, what if there was a really big Switzerland? So we're going to do that. So let me talk about Switzerland. They are in Europe, but they are not aligned. They are national populist. So is Russia. Interesting. Switzerland, if you go the national populist in Kaiserreich, the way it works is the syndicalist French try to take Hot Savoy back. If you don't get any support from your neighbors, the French will take Hot Savoy and all the French-speaking cantons. This causes the remaining Switzerland people to be upset and become national populist, just basically reactionary. Their ideology isn't really well defined. Then, when the Second World War starts in Kalterkrieg, they beat them back. Currently in-game, if you look at Europe, Switzerland has Hot Savoy again. France has a claim. Not North France, just South France. I don't know if that changes based later. The compliance is high, the resistance is low, and Henry Guisan, I don't know what his ideology, what his deal is, but he's authoritarian and Democrat. They aren't Democrat, but they will eventually become Democrat. Like, the military reactionary government that participated in the Second World War reclaimed their territories. Everything is fine. No, I don't want that. I want a Cold War. I want conflict in my Cold War. I'm not saying the direction is wrong. I'm saying this is what I would do. What I would do is I would have them go way too far. Maybe even take some more land over here. Italy, which was united for balance reasons, by the way, even though it might be controversial. Italy goes, what the heck, bro? South France goes, what the heck, bro? I believe that there should be a proxy conflict where the South French support French separatists in Switzerland. The Switzerland tag would then fight a separatist French tag, which claims all the French territories. Maybe they even also claim Italy territories, but if they win, then it goes to Italy. Whatever. It's an Accord-backed insurgency. Germany might want to support Switzerland, but by doing so, they could be causing problems for themselves. I don't know if this might be claimed content. So I want to go to this one now. Where was I? So Switzerland is a national populist government, and because of the fact that Germany betrayed them and didn't support them against the syndicalist French, they don't really want to be Reichspakt friends. But Germany's concern is, if the Entente managed to completely overthrow the Swiss government, the Swiss would become a non-neutral member of the Accord. How does Germany respond? Do they covertly send arms to help suppress the revolt, which would then make them a full ally? Do they go to the Accord and go, hey, Switzerland is a rogue state, let's deal with it together. If you and I both invade this country and capitulate it, then we'll have a situation where a neutral Switzerland is restored and you get your southern territories back. This could reduce world tension, which they're going to be reintegrating, and the world tension being high is what causes a third Weltkrieg instead of a scripted event. Good game design, because it helps players have more agency in choosing the way that the war goes, right? Great. Everything is good. Really good start. But this gives player agency in the way that you could support this rogue state, the Germans in North Korea, where they even somehow get a nuke. Who put a nuke there? Oops. Now there's no way for the Entente to directly declare war on them. Maybe if maybe there's a political situation, like decisions or a political game, maybe the leader gets assassinated. Maybe there are Republican Switzerlands who revolt alongside the French separatists. Maybe the entire thing collapses. Maybe instead of South France getting all of their old French territories, North France and Germany come in and partition Switzerland and annex Switzerland. How's that for Danubian German split? You're annexing German majority territories right next to me? I have an entire German population here. Uh-oh, I'm scared. I'm going to join the Entente. Right? There's a lot of things that can happen here that lend to the war escalating, the situation escalate. It's a situation that doesn't require a lot of rework. There's no content for Switzerland. I actually talked to a Kalterkrieg developer about this already, and they said that there's like a rework happening for Switzerland. And then this just further makes me passionate about the idea that maybe you shouldn't be following Kaiserreich reworks anymore. Maybe that's holding you back. Just food for thought. I sound really passionate and aggressive. I don't mean to come off that way. I just really, really like this scenario. I have a lot of positive opinions about it, and I want it to succeed. That's why I want to make this video. Don't harass the Kalterkrieg developers to take my ideas. They will if they want to. If you are very passionate about it yourself, maybe you can make a sub mod. Who knows? One thing I will say is that the lore for Italy as it is currently is kind of crazy. The Republicans and everybody just agree, you know what? Let's join up with the old king and let bygones be bygones. And it's like, oh, that's kind of sad, but like, that's not really plausible. But like, it really helps the balance of the game to have a fully unified Italy. And Italy content would have just been like Italy or Sardinia trying to reclaim everything through peace anyway. Why not just have it at the start? You know, people are talking about nothing ever happening. Well, you got your Italy already, and then you can start doing things with it. There you go. Let's make the Swiss act schizo. Yeah, and here's the cool thing about Switzerland content is that, like, because Savinkov's Russia still exists, even if it's like a rump state and it didn't achieve any of its goals, and it's due to collapse into a civil war, which I would like to retcon, but we'll get to that later. Their ideology of Switzerland could, instead of just being we don't like syndicalists, it could adapt to be a form of national republicanism. That's pretty interesting. I think so. Italo-Swiss war would be a cool process. Yeah, so then it couldn't just be South France. It could also be Italy going in, and then it like is reminiscent of the fact that the Italians like in World War One caused like 5 different border conflicts with Swiss. They could take this the Romand section of Switzerland. I'll see if I have my administrative. Yeah, I correct me if I'm wrong. This is an Italian-speaking canton of Switzerland. Even in the event that a neutral Switzerland is reborn, this could become Italian, and this could become French. And then, yeah, world tension is reduced by making Switzerland neutral. Switzerland then becomes a way for the Reichspakt and the court to actually have a place that's neutral to talk, because they don't have that right now. Ticino, I think that's what it's called, yeah. Why does Danubia maintain Galicia Lodomeria? Because it looks pretty. And this isn't Twilight Struggle. And this was before it was basically sort of guaranteed that the Austrians withdrew from Galicia Lodomeria, and we're not about to rework that. And it's conflict, because then the German statelet satellite states want land off of the Danubians, which may or may not split, right? This is what we want. We want conflict in our Cold War scenarios. We want conflict in our scenarios, period. Let's do some conflicting together. So this is the Dutch. We're gonna fix this border before it happens. I thought that the Dutch are a part of the German faction is also pretty interesting. I just really don't want my passion to be misconstrued for disdain for the developers. I'm very lucky that they are collaborating with me on this video and not like shoving me out of their servers or whatever. Like they're old friends of mine, and I want to give my ideas, and maybe things can be improved. What is this called again? Flanders Wallonia. There, that's pretty. That should take northern Belgium. Maybe, but like, what would that do? Would that actually improve the scenario? I don't know. Maybe a West Russian war. Yeah, so currently, the way that Russia is often designed, let's see, maybe I can... I can observe from Russia's point of view, and I can... I'll just put this on a time lapse, but currently there's a lot of scenarios where people play the mod, and then the contested territories, the occupied territories of Belarus and Ukraine are conceded without a fight. I believed, and I think I have it in my script, that at least in one of the outcomes where there's a civil war in Russia, they aren't able to fight the Germans if the Second Weltkrieg starts. I think that's wrong, and I will adjust the script if that is the case. But I've seen many cases where people are upset that there's no war in Russia. There's no continuation war with Germany and Russia. In fact, the reason why the fact that there's even a ceasefire. Hold on, I'm just trying to find something here. The fact that there's even a ceasefire to begin with is a little shaky, plausibility-wise. But I have an idea to fix that. Oh man, there's so much to say. I'm really excited to be able to share my ideas on this. Like, this was my first project, you guys. I'm very passionate about it. Kind of like the dark green of Russia. Well, that's Savinkov Lithuania colors, so we're gonna have to change that. I'm not gonna make a new folder for Savinkov's Russia. I'll get the border, the color of Lithuania in a minute here. But I want that border. I think that's the accurate border. And then, yeah, this color. Why is that there? That's weird. There, the proper Lithuania color now. But is this supposed to be Ukrainian? What is this supposed to be? I'm confused. Let's just look at this. Yeah, it's Russian, so we'll just give it to Russian. Wouldn't heavy syndicalist resistance in France and Britain be a perfect conflict for content? Germany could possibly fund cities in Britain to weaken the Entente and vice versa for northern France. I believe that there's an outcome for British content where if the totalists win in an uprising, which can happen, which might be German involved, they can even join the Reichspakt. So that's already in the game. Which is pretty interesting, right? That realpolitik. Bismarck would be proud. Like, Kalterkrieg already does a lot of things right, and we don't need to change that much. If we had to change a lot, I would be making a lore grave about it, and I'd be like, this is awful. But it's not the case. There's a lot of really good things about the scenario. Not biased at all. This is Kurland. Kurland Semigalia. Why don't we just call it Kurland instead of, well, it seems too liberal for the Germans, right? To respect the native peoples instead of the Baltic Germans. One thing that I do say in my video is that Germany should act like a villain. I think I would even go so far as to include Canada in that list. Everybody makes two rational decisions. Like, could you imagine if this is a Kaiserreich timeline, we lived in a Kaiserreich timeline, and then somebody made a continuation mod of like a Führerreich scenario, which is like, Cold War between France and Soviet Union, and then instead of fighting to the bitter end to keep the colonial empire, and then the Americans coming in to preserve an anti-communist regime in Vietnam, instead of all that, they just decolonize and Vietnam goes free, and there's no Viet Cong, and they just have a nice neo-colonial setup. That's how it feels like it was going on right now with Middle Africa. Which is a shame. You could make it extremely violent, and you could, because like the one thing, like I agreed with this approach way back in the day. I saw everybody advocating for, it's like, what if I spent my entire economy to completely destroy the separatists in Middle Africa? It's like, yeah, you would have Middle Africa, but your economy would suck. And I agree with that, but like maybe we should let people have the decision to fight to the bitter end, right? I don't know, just a thought. What do we do with Riga here? Riga is controlled by Latvia, which I think is not kosher or whatever. Like, that isn't accurate to well, Latvia is like Latvia is a puppet of Russia, so that makes sense that they'd own Riga. These are old Baltic borders and doesn't, so I'll be taking this part of it, but I'll be looking at our timeline's Estonian border, or Latvian and Estonian borders to properly fix this. Anybody play RuneScape? Anybody a boomer like me? Uh-oh. Did I just reveal my modding alias? Maybe. I'll never tell. This music is from RuneScape. I love it. I haven't played it a lot, don't have much time for it. I've been playing Guardians of Azuma, the Rune Factory spin-off, and I love it to death. It is so fast. It's on Unreal Engine, and I feel like a speedrunner every time I play. And part of the reason why I probably feel like a speedrunner is that I am trying to get my trying to get my like as much banger for my buck, which is fun actually, because instead of like going way too fast in a what the hell? Where? I'm gonna keep searching until I find an Estonia color. It's gonna be a while. There. Let's take that one. I'm trying to get my time in before I have to stop playing, because I only have so much time to play in the day. There's a lot of people talking right now, and I will take a break to read some comments of people's, because I've calmed it down a bit. Okay, let's see. Would Austria collapse like Yugoslavia? That's the idea. But that would mean studying African history? Well, that's the thing. They actually did study a lot of African history. The Middle Africa is probably one of the most well-researched regions in the mod right now. I'll switch over to a time lapse of the mod while I am. Let me reset settings. Okay. Open a bridge accidentally. It was confusing me. Yeah, I'm gonna pull up Hearts of Iron 4 just to have a little time lapse going, so people aren't bored while I'm reading chat. RuneScape and big, yeah. Would America reunite permanently split? I'm gonna have it permanently, not permanently split. The idea, like if we were to go like, oh, let's focus on a peaceful reunification of the United States, or study the political whatever, like people would just be like, oh, nothing's happening, I want to unite America. Like, we're not about to undo all the work that's been done in America, so I'm not touching America. The way that America is currently set up is perfect. No need to change it. Alemannic separatism movement propositions the southern parts of Germany to join Switzerland. There was actually like a focus in the very, very early Chroma era that like was a trap focus. If you took it as Switzerland, you'd just die. But it was supposed to relate to that. Yeah, I have heard of that. That something like that could be studied in German October, because of the like German fracturing that had happened due to the war. What are we doing here? I don't understand why Germany's in good position. Aren't they sandwiched between the Entente and Russia? Yeah, but they won several world wars. Their western half might have been occupied by the syndicalist French, and they had to do a lot of reconstruction. But a couple of years into this scenario, they're already ready to trounce everyone. And through several different people's gameplay experiences, Germany wins often. So that's why I'm saying that they're doing well. A split France, this seems familiar. Yeah, I mean, no comment. Yes, comment. I worked on this mod, so I have a lot of inspiration for my other projects here. When you increase the volume of your microphone, I can barely hear you. Hello? Wait, really? No, that wouldn't increase it, would it? And you guys are just... Oh, what? No way. Really? That... No. Sorry you can barely hear me. My microphone's further away from where I'm sitting because this is a temporary setup still. I'll try moving closer. What else do we have here? Occitan Syndicalist Rebellion. That could be interesting. Right now, I believe there's only a Syndicalist rebellion in northern France, which makes more sense given the fact that southern France is a multi-party democracy, and social democrats could sway enough voters to be able to actually want to be a part of the government, rather than like neo-socialists in northern France. Like, what do we have here? Curated democracy. This is interesting. National Front. From the top down. Yeah, technocrats, right? They have technocrats and like reformed totalists. You know how like Marcel Deat was a German collaborator? That's the sort of thing that they have going on here, but it's more official and stable, which is terrifying. Which is why I don't think that France should really be reworked. Yeah, so look, hey guys, look, something's happening. A proxy conflict with Israel, Palestine, the social nationalist state of Syria, and the Arab Republic of Syria, and Lebanon exists, and Kurdistan exists. That's cool. I think that people had some complaints with how like long it takes. Are there any like modifiers that make it that way? Nope. Who knows, man? I don't know. What do we got here? Doesn't Wilhelm II die before the start? Yes. Wilhelm III is currently in charge, and then his son takes over, and he's like, I don't remember what his title is, but would Austria? Yeah, I think Austria could and maybe even should collapse like Yugoslavia. Problem is that if let's take over, like guys, this is a fully fleshed out mod that you can play right now with good content. You can play. Maybe I'll even play it myself. Really big focus tree. Very in-depth. Mises, guys, we can have Austrian economics, dude. Let's go. Look at this. There's an entire chamber of deputies, which is influenced by the national diets, which you can influence through this. Look at all this stuff. This is amazing. Look at all these decisions. They're color-coded. The ideologies are represented in seats in parliament. The coalition of the ruling party is highlighted, but this is so cool. This is really well made. If we just go, let's have a Yugoslav collapse, guys. Like, what would happen to this? Well, I say, an idea that I have, is that this mini game of causing all the elections for all the different people, and I don't know enough about this to be accurate, but if there is parties that are nationalists that can be elected that are like Danubian Federation skeptic, then they could, in the event of a Danubian collapse, like maybe if you have 50% of your constituent states all being separatist states, then a civil war could happen where the loyalist Danubians are fighting the nationalists, and then you can have an extra faction in there for good measure, like socialists that are like, let's do a revolution now that the capitalists are fighting each other. And then maybe if the war goes on for too long, things collapse. All this stuff, you can say it. Implementing it is harder. Making everything here, and like we need to respect all this stuff. Like this is a election in Galicia that's happening, and soon there'll be election here, and you have to influence that. Super cool. We need to keep that. We need to keep the work that's already been put in here. We're not reworking things. This is a lore doctor. We're not amputating this beautiful arm that people made. This is beautiful. The Danubian Federation is beautiful. This is so awesome. The flag, even better than the one that was made before, because it was like removing the monarchist symbol. There's a monarchist symbol right there. Maybe the old Chroma era one could be good for a republic. What if there's a Danubian republic? That's cool. Wow. A lot of things you can do. A lot of things that you can expand on without removing, without deleting. Definitely would keep this. Yeah, maybe we add a collapse like Yugoslavia. That could be a really fun thing, but it doesn't have to happen in order for the mod to be saved. A lot of different things we can do. What is going on here? Let's see. What else are people saying? American are fully united. Oh, the USA came to me. America was fully united. Actually, no. This is the state of America in Kalterkrieg currently. Before a escalation of the conflict between the members of the Ottawa Accords of New England, the American Constitutional Coalition, and the Great Lakes government all agree that this is a stinky government that needs to die. And once this stinky government dies, they can unite and reform America. Perfect. Don't need to change it. Generals, armies, order of battle, everything's good. No need to change it. This is already good. I'm not changing. No America changes. First time I came to New England unintentionally, got my entire army circled and capitulated in weeks. Felt random. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. We should normalize telling people who don't know how to develop Hearts of Iron 4, who tell Hearts of Iron 4 knows why they're stupid, that they should just make their own mod. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure, Random Brit. I think I answered your question, and maybe I misinterpreted it. When I played Danubia, I was let down by the little foreign policy played a part, considering the lore built it up as a peaceful, neutral middleman between the Reichsmacht and the Entente. That's fair. Yeah, maybe we can add some extra content, maybe decisions, maybe some focus trees that allow you to play the middleman. But it might be, the reason why that might not be the case is because there's no solidified Danubian Reichspacht split, Danubian German split. I believe that either it's coded in or it was intended to be that if you take certain paths, working with Berlin or pursue diplomatic autonomy, if Danubia takes this focus and Germany takes, hold on, I want to observe again. If Danubia takes this focus, and the Germans take this focus, the relationships go down. Instead of making this something that could happen, and this would mean that content would need to be removed. This is one of the more substantial changes that I'm proposing. Maybe this already splits. Maybe I don't think Germany should even have a Europa project. That's a little the fact that they could even consider doing that is insane to me, to be honest. Why does Israel exist? Well, hold on, I'm thinking, because I researched some Israel history recently. There's the Kaiserreich tag for the Palestine region exists and has Jewish refugees moving in there because of the Balfour Declaration or something. I know that the Balfour Declaration was made with the British and the Ottomans are controlling it, but for some international reason, there are Jewish people moving into historic Palestine, which then, in the event of a major Syrian collapse, allows for Israel to exist. Note that they aren't owning all of this territory. They would probably only own this sliver, right? It's not nearly as substantial as our timeline, given the horrible events of our timeline, but I can see why it exists. Anyway, let's get back to mapping. Actually, I'm gonna be right back. Just give me 1 minute. Where's my Photoshop? Hello? What? No, there it is. Okay. I'm back. Probably wasn't even a minute. What's going on here? There should be an anarcho-capitalist. It's a very hot take given the fact that ANCAPs wouldn't even have a standing army, so what would even happen? It's just you're viewing Hearts of Iron 4 mods as vehicles to express political beliefs, which is not the right way to go. Everyone takes a dunk on Buryatia in TNO, maybe for good reason, but it might make sense for this land to be German because what navy would be used, right? Maybe, I don't know. It's really minor. It doesn't need to be changed. Players can complain, they can make suggestions, so you shouldn't act like backseat developers. I agree, and just knowing a lot about Kaiserreich lore doesn't make you a good developer. It's a self-roast, by the way, old Kaiserreich developers, Kalterkrieg developers. I am a part of that. I did design some stuff for the mod itself, like design, not just backseat design. I think I even coded this in. Oh no, the tree already changed, but the starting tree for Russia I designed, and the I did a lot of this stuff. I did these things. I think I did this. Like, I did it. The team did it. I was a part of it. I remember coding this. I think I made it too wide and they like compressed it a bit. I might have helped design this, but I didn't design that. But like, I did do design work. I wasn't just a backseat developer, but it was like the little chip in the way that let me avoid that criticism of being a backseat developer. Well, what was your feedback, Mr. Coffee? Was it nothing ever happens, or what did you say to them? I think that when people come in and then go like, it should be like this, or like give feedback for something else, like it's misinterpreted because like you could be suggesting something completely unachievable, and then at that point, yeah, maybe your suggestions do need to be considered to be inappropriate, but I don't know. It's a hard thing, especially in the beginning. Like, you get a lot of feedback, and a lot of it's the same thing. Nothing ever happens. Just dunking on them. I mean, it would make it hard for you to receive feedback. So I have a lot of empathy for the Kalterkrieg developers. Watching that guy from college video about the nothing ever happened, it really, really screwed up the motivation for a lot of developers. It's unfortunate that released, but at the same time, the feedback is like you can't just dismiss feedback when people are saying something. You have to believe, at least with a slight belief that people have good intentions, that they have something to say for a reason. But it's hard. It's hard to do it properly. This mod is so boring, nothing ever happens in the mod. Yeah. Bye-bye. For fan ideas to see the green-brown populist debate of Kaiserreich, I think the community and developers handle that well. Yeah. Something's happening, don't listen to the haters. Please tell me why the Turkish-Bulgarian border is strained, because the Ottoman Empire isn't a sitting duck, and during the Balkan War, they claimed Muslim-majority border territories. It's something that can happen in Kaiserreich. Notably, they didn't actually have it in the final product here. But I'm going to keep it for now, because I don't want to worry about that. I just want to get some separate layers going so I can start making more adjustments. Russian Manchuria. Okay, there you go. Oh, sorry, I forgot I moved my microphone closer. I had the idea that the Russians took the Eurasian path. I want to reveal the biggest, craziest revision so far. Are you ready for this? Currently in the lore of Kalterkrieg, the syndicalists gain so much ground against the Reichspakt that the Reichspakt are forced to sign a non-aggression pact with Russia. Russia accepts. Why does Russia accept? Not really specified. But Russia accepts the idea to have a white peace. And this is not accurate, so I'm going to... It's not even... like this. Yeah, we're just getting rid of that. Russia agrees to a white peace that allows for them to rebuild some more, I guess, but then it doesn't resolve in any way, and might not even make sense for Russia to do that. Like, if Germany's such a back foot, they keep going, then they can defeat them. Why? I have an idea.
maybe the ceasefire isn't just about suppressing the syndicalists. Maybe Russia has a reason to want to do a non-aggression pact with Germany. Now that the Russia rework is out, which was being developed while lore was being developed, so maybe this is already the idea of the lore, I don't know. Because like Kalterkrieg developers had to keep really quiet about Kaiserreich reworks because then they'd be leaking stuff. So like people in the developer team not even know this. Only people who haven't be on a B-to-know basis, whatever. It doesn't matter. We know that Semyonov has a revolt in the east, and he can go really far if you let him. He can be powerful. He can be supported by the Japanese. Okay, the Japanese can support a Russian claimant. What does this mean? Especially when Japan is occupying German colonial territories. What if the ceasefire allows for Germany and Russia, and maybe even the Entente too, to all go in against Japan? So instead of Japan leading the co-prosperity sphere, which, as far as I know, doesn't have any coded content, maybe there's something in a branch, I don't know, but in the mod as it is released right now, I believe there's no content. Instead of having Japan be a major power in the Pacific, have the Reichspact's colonial holdings maintained, have Russia maybe even occupy Manchuria, but they would at least have a lot of presence in Xinjiang and Mongolia. They would have Sakhalin, and maybe they even have Hokkaido. Maybe the Accord and the Reichspact all occupy different areas of Japan. And so, split Japan. No, I don't think that a split Japan would last. I think that everybody but Russia would accept a solution to unite Japan again, but under heavy restrictions, right? Totally possible. Really interesting too. Have it all together. What else is going on here? At the end of the day, Hearts of Iron 4 is a World War II sim. It's really hard to make Cold Wars. Yeah, I agree. I covered that in my Kalterkrieg mod, my Krasnot video, which is why I believe that Cold War scenarios should be designed with the idea that it can go into a World War II. Maybe not guaranteed. World War III, maybe not guaranteed, but give people the option to have player agency to set up the World War III that they want. Right? But anyway, so this idea, pretty radical, right? The Entente and the Reichspact would be the only people around in Asia. Northern China may even still own Manchuria, but Russia would own this stuff instead of Xinjiang being a South China puppet or whatever. Then that means that when the Chinese continue their civil war after the United Front, maybe Russia goes in and attacks northern China. That means that they get all of Eurasia, and they can be like, we're Eurasia, we're not Russia. So it's a big cope because they weren't able to reclaim old Imperial Russian territory. And they'll just be like, the borderline between Eurasia and Asia is this line here, and our lands are these lands. We're the heirs of Genghis, bro. And then what would South China feel if the Entente and Accord were like, oh, well, we kind of need Russia to be strong so that in the event that we have a war with Germany, then Russia can open up a second front instead of us going, you know what, China, you deserve all your land. Maybe let's even get outer Manchuria and then invade Russia, and then Germany invades Russia, and then you split Russia in Europe and Siberia, and then the Entente are here, the Accord is here, and then the Reichspact is here. Yeah, maybe that could be an outcome. Could be interesting. Or the Accord is you know what, let's just let it be. We have other things to deal with. And then China gets upset and then isn't a Accord member. But then maybe there's a weird defensive agreement between the Reichsband that is oh no. But you guys, Russia or Eurasia is national populist. The Liberal Accord wouldn't dare work with national populists. Well, why not, bro? For divorcing the ideological aspect, instead using ideology as a tool in a Cold War where people are fighting a war of a Cold War, then why not support a major nation bordering your greatest adversary? Why not? And like, maybe there's still a Russian civil war. Maybe the fact that they're rebranding their identity so much to be Eurasian rather than Russian, there's a civil war. Another piece of content to add to the game that something can happen in. There you go. Will I make a video, Lore? Yeah, dude, I have like a 35-minute long script already. It'd be funny if Russia and Japan have their own Cold War inside a Cold War. Here's the thing. Having tri or quad or penta-centric Cold Wars just muddies the focus. The character of a Cold War that we're trying to capture with this core is two sides. And while TNO does it really well with three sides, it's like kind of determined that the Japanese Empire would fall apart, and then the Organization of Free Nations and the whatever the pact name is would carve out their influence in the ashes. And that's good, but we don't have that right now, and it would probably be better to have a major reform that redefines the scenario to breathe new life into it. That's just my opinion, and it's the last suggestion I make because of how outlandish it is. It would require China lore to be reworked. It would require China program to be recoded. It would require Russia content to be recoded. There'd be a lot of stuff that need to be done to properly make this adjustment work. But it could be pretty interesting to have a Eurasia in the Cold War. That hasn't been done before. And it makes sense given the Russia rework, but that we know and now have our hands on. That is a possibility, so it could be pretty interesting. Canada itself is untouched. Canada produced a lot for the war effort. Yes, they did. In Vancouver, I live there. There's a bunch of places that were like old Navy factories for the World War, and they like list all their things, but now they're like parks. I went to one, it was a water park, and my kids were playing in the water where the ships used to be built. You can see the hangar bars where they suspended the boats. It's really cool to be able to see the history like that. And in Kalterkrieg, maybe those naval factories never go out of commission. Maybe, especially because if they're in if they have a presence in the Pacific, like, can you imagine Canadian Hong Kong? In this event, if we take this approach where the Entente have a very large presence in Asia, the lease from Hong Kong would be applied to the British, which would be seated in Canada, so Canada would control Hong Kong. Like, that's it's crazy. Go outside. Are you outside right now? What are you doing? Someone is waiting. Really? Oh, the door's unlocked. They can come in. Yeah, get out of my face, man. Why are the lights in the car on? I need to look into that. What's going on here? Where does Canada export anything? They don't have a big enough consumer base. Germany fills every other market, and biggest trade partners are completely destroyed. Taking everything but not focusing on Europe. Of Eurasia. Well, here's the thing, like, you could make economic arguments for this whole scenario, and then yeah, you could put it in Victoria 3 and you could simulate an economy all well and good. But that's not what we have here. We have a World War II mod that's being a World War II game that's being designed for a World War III. So what is going on here? Doesn't make much sense. Didn't Germany also get affected by the economic collapse? Yes, they did. So in Kalterkrieg, what other Cold War mods do I like in Hearts of Iron 4? 1000 Week Reich TNO. I haven't played Iron Curtain, but I like the alternate history, Cold Wars. I think the Germans can set up a rival government in Britain. I feel like that would cause a war right away, though. I don't know. I prefer the way that the British lore is currently set up, and we don't want to rework everything. But speaking of reworking everything, let's map out this Eurasia. Eurasia would be... Well, do we have a German October thing that we could pull on? The problem is that the German October assets are so screwed up. Let's do 220 for Mongolia. Nope. And then do 180. Wait, shouldn't I be doing slashes on this? This is the Eurasia version, so we just select that. What about India? They're staying the same? I don't know. Don't have many notes for India. Whatever suits the scenario best. And maybe that means that they are... maybe that means that they are what's going on here? Why have they joined? It's supposed to be contiguous. Nani? Why are they joining up when they're clearly separated? This is supposed to be contiguous, right? No, it's not supposed to be contiguous. That's why. That's unfortunate. And then if we have Russia having a larger presence in Eurasia, it could be that Korea gets Korea becomes national populist, and then you have like a meme like Kim Il-sung could be a national populist. But don't tell the tankies I said that. But yeah, and then at that point, the reason why this is the last suggestion is that it's so outlandish, so reworks so many things, and it might not add that much benefit to the improvement of the scenario. So that's why it's the last suggestion. But it's such a cool idea that I thought I would keep it. Now that we have the Russia scenario, or the Russia rework to play with, we can make interesting decisions like that. Completely redefine it. The benefit of it in the lore is that it gives a reason for the Russians to actually consider a ceasefire with Germany, because it secures their state from Semyonov, and they both have a mutual enemy in Japan, because Japan is supporting Semyonov. And then Russia, yeah, maybe they occupy Manchuria, maybe they won't, because the lore has it where the Fengtian clique goes disloyal and signs up with the Chinese United Front. Which means that they would keep Manchuria, but I'm putting this in because this is their claims, and it's pretty interesting to see how it would work together. If anything, I think we need some sort of third international remnants. But that's just my idea. Well, India could be a good candidate for a socialist country remnant. If I had to pick, it would be India, but I also suggested Hokkaido and Sakhalin, so let's take a look at that. We should probably... What is it? Is this it? Oh, whatever. I can work with this. I'll do Eurasia though, so that I don't get stuff. I should probably change the color of Eurasia too. Make it more black. I think that's what they do in Kaiserreich too. Look at this. Maybe let's just... I'll find a better selection for that. Doesn't this seem like the biggest cope that the Russians could do after losing the European conflict of Germany? And Eurasianism as a political ideology itself is like the Western democratic model is based off of the geographical realities of the region, and that doesn't suit Russia. The Russians have been with the steppe or whatever, they are influenced by the Mongolians. They should instead be more Eurasian, and this is an interesting country, and I would like to see how that would work in the Cold War. So this is the last suggestion, but probably not appropriate. So they definitely don't need to take that. Like I would not die on that hill. I would probably die on the Swiss Alps though. Like the making Switzerland national populist is pretty cool. Maybe the KMT could win China. Well, I don't want to rework China lore though. Currently it's federalists and the Beiyang government, and we're going to keep it that way. Yeah, like if the KMT won and you can align with the KMT as Russia, then Russia has a really big presence there. But maybe that's better suited for Krasnot, because I still don't know what's happening with China and the Krasnot. If that hits 2,000 likes, I'll have to do a part 2. Maybe that fits there, especially because it's a dead mod. This is an alive mod. It's a fully living and breathing world that you can play with. And I would love to see people play with it more. But look, the Guangzhou Federalists are fighting the Beiyang government. The Xinjiang are part of this faction. The Beiyang are part of their own faction. These are supported by the Reichspakt. These are supported by the Accord. It's a big proxy war. May be too balanced towards the Beiyang government currently. That can change, and is a good way for people to get army experience for a Second World War. By the way, public service announcement, there's a game rule that makes it so the event that can start World War II always starts World War II, and at the start, by default, it's set to never happen. So you can change that if you want to have a better experience. It looks like the Danubians have the Bay of Kotor. So that's good to know. Back to Photoshop. That's the Eurasian color. There. Accurate. Japan is occupied, then India and Indonesia and Central Asia going synchless would be great as an anti-colonial reaction. Yes, the Pan-Asian liberation movement could be centered in India. The reintroduction of German colonists in Vietnam and the Dutch in Indonesia could lend to violent syndicalist rebellions as a third power that can also have a way to sway the syndicalist revolts that may occur other places in the world. 100%. I think I would put that in there. Maybe I'll try to fit that in the script. It'll probably just be a couple lines near the end of the video though. Canadian exploitation of the Great Lakes being something that could either be a flashpoint between the two. This might be like a second thing you said. Chasing the Canadian autonomy. Yes. Those are things that I wanted to pursue with the way that Canada was being depicted, but that's not what's currently put in the game, so we're not going to suggest that they change it. I would probably say something like make Canada more of a villain, like maybe highlight the fact that the residential schools were going on at the time, and don't just whitewash that. They're already whitewashing it by making the decolonization efforts more a chiropact thing. So no complaints there, but it feels like I made this, but like not like the only thing I really made so far is the Eurasia, and that's not even done. But let's take a look at what else they have here. Oh, I'm getting a phone call. Let's gotta see this. Scam call. Sucks because like if you answer scam calls, then they call you again. But there's a lot of things that I've had to be on the phone call for, so it's very unfortunate. When it comes to like big revisions, there's nothing wrong with the Chiropat. The Syrian civil war could be adjusted. But as it is right now, the Chiropat being a force for decolonization, really cool. We want to keep that. Middle Africa being a Vietnam-esque war for the Germans. Yeah, so I saw a comment made by somebody on the Discord that really rubbed me the wrong way. He said, I guess people just want to see German teens dying in the jungle, lol. It's like, okay, bro, do you know what happened in Vietnam? I guess Americans just want to see teens dying in the jungles of Vietnam, lol. Like, that's a very, a core meme of the Cold War is teens dying in the jungle. Like, not to say that they have to take it or whatever, but it's Geopolitical, not Libya, right? Libya was a Italian name, like not an Italian name, but the Italians gave Libya their name. I think it had to do with like Roman claims in the region, or what it was. But South Africa helps Middle Africa. Is it a minority government right now? Because if you're going to be going with the Canada leader of the Kansas Union, maybe they support the South Africans, and then the civil war could be a spillover. Because look, they have an entire Pan-African liberation front in Middle Africa. Like, if people, there have been, oh well, it's already gone in this one. But look at all this depth that's been added to Africa. There's different collapse conditions for each. This is a Pan-African socialist country. These are conservatives. This is Pan-African revolutionary Republican. This is like market liberal. This is it's a warlord regime. They still have the minority rule thing when the ruler is a Askari, so they need to fix that bug. But the entire reason why the Middle African revolts, the Middle Africa collapses currently in lore, is due to a Pan-African liberation front. Why isn't that being translated into South Africa? Why is nothing happening here? Like, it could be a direct continuation. And then, yeah, maybe the alignment of South Africa and the minority government ruling there can be determined between whether or not the Canadians go more imperial focused and are willing to accept the minority ruled government. Although Diefenbaker, one of the leaders of Canada, historically was extremely against the minority ruled government. So maybe with George A. Drew, I think that he was kind of he wasn't the greatest guy. He probably would be fine with the minority government. But Diefenbaker wouldn't be. But you can't even have Diefenbaker at the start. But probably the Liberals and definitely the CCF, they wouldn't be that. This guy would be pro South Africa in the Entente, and then the fact that Canada could go from a pro South Africa minority government to an anti South America United government, because these are even conservatives, even though they're listed as market liberal. The conservatives come back and they're like, no, this sucks, don't do that. And then what happens to South Africa then? South Africa's minority government could be a Reichspakt member. And it makes sense given the fact that they're like directly next to this another apartheid regime here. So yeah, just lovely things going on in Africa in this point of history. But like that change barely requires any adjustment. Like, just add a little bit of, add another civil conflict to South Africa, have the Accord vote on whether or not they decide to let South Africa in, or if they focus on recognizing the South African Republic, and then try to, get in on the Pan-African thing. But then what would France say about that? France would probably be pro-South Africa. There's a conflict between the Entente and the Accord and the way that they vote. Content, literal content, right here. You can use this. Maybe I'll try to fit that in the script. It's a really good way to expand on the way that Middle Africa is currently set up. So very good, very good. Whoa, look at this. Socialist revolt in Bulgaria. That's cool. But it barely lasts. That's unfortunate. Could be interesting seeing that go further. Oh, guys, I lost. I swear I'm good at Hearts of Iron 4. I guess I'm now Albania. Interesting. Now, what else do we got here? Could the French Republic collapse? I believe there's no way for the French Republic to collapse currently. I believe that the only way that any France can collapse is if the scripted revolt that happens in North France happens and then they defeat the Germans. If it's a syndicalist revolt, then the Germans just go back and march in, and then maybe the South French join up too, and then there's a world war over it, I think. But if it's revolutionary Republican, then they immediately join with South France, and then France is unified again, and then Germany can't respond. And the support of the rebellions there is something that the Accord can do. I think they have to vote on it or something. So that's completely valid, and that's good stuff. But there's no South France collapse event currently. So I've already mentioned that I think that Switzerland should be big. If the South French are defeated in their attempts to liberate their kinsmen, then the legitimacy of the North French government increases, or at least is increased in comparison to the legitimacy of the South French government. Then there's the fact that the Entente may be wanting to support anti-colonialism due to the fact that it would really dunk on the Germans' world order. That, and even France in our history historically decolonized. One of the reasons why they did is because they didn't want to pay the veterans that were conscripts or volunteers from the colonial empire. Because if you were an African soldier that worked for France, the French Empire, you got a pension, but they couldn't afford it. And they're like, well, if you're not a part of the French Empire anymore, we don't have to pay you. So I believe that's one of the reasons why the French decolonized. So decolonization might be a contested thing for the South French, especially Algeria. You know who's bordering Algeria? The Cairo Pact. You know who would love to delegitimize the French government in order to let their government be the only government? Germany. Germany supports the Cairo Pact's funding of pan-Arab or just anti-colonial Algerians and Tunisians. If that happens, and this decolonization happens, what does France have left? And they didn't get this. What does this France have left? I guess at that point, South France is just a liability for the Accord. They would probably just give it up without a fight. Now the Italians are isolated when the French are here. Maybe Danubia isn't a part of the Reichspakt, but they don't have any bordering allies anymore. That sucks. How are even the British supposed to get in there? Is Gibraltar owned by the Spanish? Yes, it is. In the mod, it currently is. And the Spanish Republic can be Accord. So then they have an ability to go through here, but having Northern France, having a collapse condition for South France could be really good. Why is there something big? Because I made it big, and it's an idea that was carried over from old Kalterkrieg that I think should be re-implemented for the sake of adding a proxy conflict that is directly in Europe, interacts with tags that already have content that can be expanded due to such content being added, and also it's pretty interesting to have a North Korea, but it's Switzerland. Is Spain in the Entente? Yes, I believe they are. Yes, they are in the Accord. The Spanish Republic is a member of the Accord. I think they might either start off that way or they are scripted to become members of the Accord. South France becomes an Occitania regime? No, I wouldn't do that. Is Spain, France, and Italy unite Birmingham? The Italians are led by Savoyards, so that would be difficult. When's the next update? I don't know. They did a compatibility update recently. I'm not a developer, so I don't know for sure. But just rambling about things that I think could be added. Hopefully, at least one of these ideas I proposed becomes a new element of the mod, and you could see an interesting proxy conflict. But it's up to them, because I'm not a developer. I don't have the time to code this stuff in. I'm working on the Tommy K Hearts of Iron 4 mod right now, which I will probably do a stream about developing, maybe even tomorrow. So I'll keep you guys posted about that. But yeah, I don't have the time for this. Other people could do submods, and then maybe the submods could be integrated. We don't have to be harassing these people who made something out of their own volunteered time. They aren't a studio that you paid money for. Like, remember, like these complaints about the way that the mod would work would have a lot more credence if this is a game that you paid for. But it's not a game you paid for. You paid for Hearts of Iron 4. The people who made Kalterkrieg didn't get any money from this at all. Nothing. They did it from their own, because they were passionate about this project, for fun. And to have you guys have people come in and shit all over their hard work is infuriating. So just keep that in mind. Minigame influence like the Balkans until now. For what? For what region? Latin Union? I think there's already something for the South French like that. Let's take a look at their focus tree. Oops, that's Hearts of Iron 4. That's with 2. This is Hearts of Iron 4. There's a, like... Where is it? Ministry of Foreign Affairs... famed. It doesn't have a description. Famed content will be added with the Italy rework. Okay, so but this is the idea. Is I think it was even a historic thing. The French Republic, the Kingdom of Italy, and Greece had like a military agreement that they can expand on, and then Spanish, if they aren't socialist, they could join up with that as well. And then there's an interesting, like, the really cool thing about the Accord, especially if you go with the British Empire of Australasia, Canada, and the United Kingdom being a Kansas union, you have multinational unions within multinational unions of Canada and the British Empire, and the French and the Latin-speaking democratic republics compared to the reactionary monarchies in the north. Really interesting stuff. And the fact that they can be like integrating with each other and learning from their own experiments is really fun, really cool to see. I really want to see this expanded. There's a lot of potential for Kalterkrieg. I hope that this highlight of their mod helps get people more invested into it, and maybe even join up with the Kalterkrieg developers. And hey, maybe the Kalterkrieg developers don't even maybe you don't even need to become the Kalterkrieg developer. Maybe you make your own submod. Who knows? Canada just invaded the American Union state. The entire Accord invaded the American Union state. This seems like a good reason for the Reichspakt to get involved. Is that going to happen? Who knows? Trotsky Penguin. Yeah, great idea, man. Let's add a lot of schizo content to the mod. Why not? You still have Russian Manchuria, but Japan still has empire, for the same reason why Japan still... Yeah, but then you're completely destroying all of the China content. Is that worth it? No, because you're removing a proxy conflict instead of adding one. That sounds like a good idea for something that could be in a different Cold War Kaiserreich scenario, but not Kalterkrieg, right? This is a very interesting dynamic, because it's like, yeah, I love that idea. I love a lot of these ideas people are saying. I would love to see these, but maybe not in Kalterkrieg, because like it's a currently developing thing. Like, this isn't a lore grade, this is a Kalterkrieg. This is a LoreDoc. What do we got here? And now let's add the AUS. This border is definitely going to be inaccurate, and I'll deal with it later. No, the thing's moved over. I don't know if I want to get copyright struck for this. Right. Is Canada a republic? No, Canada is a monarchy. There is a Canada Republic path, but I'm not sure if it causes the death of the Accord. Oh, hey! In this escalation of the conflict, the United States got restored. That's cool. And there's no direct war with this. But look at the Provisional Government of Algeria fighting with the French Republic. Moroccan Federation is Accord aligned. Like, this decolonization looks cool, man. I don't know. What? Huh? Yeah, This doesn't track. John Diefenbaker allowing the South Africans in. Yeah, I don't know about that. Bogdanov? Still a Russian puppet? Occupied puppet of who? How do I see that? Russian military government? That's cool. Central Asian military district. Yeah, there you go. That makes sense, I guess. But wouldn't they just annex it? I don't know. Look, I can watch this entire thing and have several comments about the entire way that it works. Look, there's Serbia content here, there's a radical socialist thing, and there's potentially a Montenegro separatist rebellion. The Serbian claims on northern Albania. Look at Albania is in the Reichspakt now. They broke free of their puppet status as Serbia, and now look at, there's so much content here, you guys. And we don't need to get rid of any of it. This is pretty good, man. I don't know. You know, look, maybe Albania and the Reichspakt having this region that is contested between Albania and Greece. Look at that extra content. There's a lot here, man. People are just complaining. Probably not fairly. Definitely not fairly. I really like this icon, the Presidential Council. That's pretty cool. Funny Serbia, Montenegro. Yeah. There's a lot of different Russia outcomes here. That could be good, but then having a Russian civil war means that the Reichspakt can just expand into their former territories without any conflict. But you have Letland, is interesting. Look at all this content and look at all this world building and depth. It's so good. I don't know. I think I'm reaching the end of my yapping capabilities here. Whoa, what? The Paris Commune. Oh, the Paris. Oh. There's a Paris Commune that existed for 2 seconds, and now the World War III has begun in 1956. And let's see, the Algerian government, they had no capabilities of even taking that out. Done. Kingdom of France is done. There goes the Spanish Republic. There goes the Kingdom of Italy. Albania is having a little bit of a tussle here. The Nubian Federation is not in the war because the Germans declared the war. Russia is in no position to intervene because of how unstable they are, so the Germans don't even have to worry about that front. They've already made landings in London. Despite the fact that Canada restored the United States aren't in the Entente. They don't have content yet. This is a symptom of the alpha build. If they had content, then it would be already done, and they would be able to actually maybe do a fight. But this is the problem with the balance of the monarchy. I don't think even the Argentinian and Brazilian proxy conflict happened yet. But something is happening, you guys. There is a conflict that led to a third World Trade. This isn't that bad of a scenario. People are just complaining a lot. I don't know. I feel like I have made my case, and I have a lot of things to think about now. Thank you very much for looking at my maps and hearing my ramblings. I appreciate all your comments. That really helps me understand how to make the scenario, or my version of the scenario, better, and my adjustments to be more constructive. And something always happens, there's things that they can do gameplay balance wise, making Germany less stable after the collapse, making them have more debuffs, making them have more proxy conflicts that take their resources away from the conflict at hand. All that stuff can happen still, and we can suggest that to the developers. They'll handle that. I'm going to be focusing on things that I think that the scenario could adjust to add more conflicts for people to have more things to do during the quote-unquote nothing ever happens thing, which I really want to dispel, because there's a lot happening, there's a lot of things to do. But thank you very much, everybody, for watching. If you have any more ideas or comments, I have a Discord channel server you can check out. I'd love to hear your comments there. There's like a lore grave discussion channel, even though this isn't a lore grave, you can put it in there. If you have ideas, you can add them in the comments of this video, and I'll be sure to credit anybody who I explicitly take ideas from. But the script is at a pretty good point right now. The Kalterkrieg developers are just reviewing it to make sure that I don't misrepresent their project. I'm really excited. There's maybe a surprise coming out on Friday. Maybe you'll learn about it tomorrow. But thank you very much, everyone, for watching and tuning in, giving your comments. Appreciate it all. Except for the guy who said he was outside my house. Like, come on. All right. Have a good day, everyone.